Wednesday, October 6th, 2021. Today on the Daily Review, we discuss the fifth and final Netflix Dave Chappelle stand-up comedy special entitled The Closer, with your host, me, Joe LaRocca. It's a quick Wednesday. Remember, Wednesday's my long day. Damn. Dave Chappelle closes it out with The Closer, filmed in Detroit, Michigan, on Netflix as of yesterday, directed by Stan Latham. As he announces at the very beginning, it's going to be his last special for a minute, which means for a couple of years, I think. At first, it starts out, and I went, oh, this is kind of like Sticks and Stones, which is another one of his specials that, I don't know, people are a little bit upset with, especially the trans community, but I also just didn't find it as funny as some of the other specials, just because sometimes, a comedian goes after, like, hot-button topics, and sometimes it feels like there's not really a purpose behind it. It's just kind of an easy target, and Chappelle almost never does that. So that's not what I'm talking about, but I felt like it was starting like that, because he goes through COVID and preacher abuse stuff and black on Asian violence, although he has a great joke about that he's in quarantine. He's watching videos on black on Asian violence and he's got COVID. And he said that's probably what's happening inside his body right now, which is an amazing joke, even though it's culturally insensitive, but it's called comedy. This is the point of all this. So he does 10, 15 minutes of that, and I was kind of like, all right, not really, not my thing necessarily, but then he's like, all right, the reason this is gonna be the last one for a while is I got to clear some stuff up, some things I've said in previous ones, and especially to the gay and trans community. And at first it seems like excuses, let me use this platform to kind of clear my name a little bit about some stuff that I maybe went too far on or was misunderstood about. And it does start sounding like that. Especially when he gets into feminism and stuff like that. You're like, oh no, what's going on here? And then he hits this point where he's talking about the Me Too movement, and he goes, that's not, he's like, you don't just wear a black dress to the Oscars. You get off the bus. And it's like, huh? What do you mean? And he's like, I got off the bus. I left $50 million on the table and I got off the bus because this industry is fucked up, right? That's what he's saying. He's like, I saw this shit. Not even, I'm assuming more from a black perspective than from a feminist perspective, but he just saw how bad this was, and he's getting the wrong laughs, And so there's a little bit of white knighting, I know, no pun intended there, where he's telling a story that kind of makes him look awesome. But it's true. It's what he's so angry about with all of this progress that has come up and how little of it has affected the black community is what his viewpoint is. That, yeah, like, you may be having a tough time, but I think his feeling is that, you weren't enslaved and dragged over here and treated like shit for hundreds of years. But that being said, that well, you wouldn't even have thought that you would have thought there was 8 trans people in the world 20 years ago. You know what I mean? 15 years ago, I would have been like, what is that? 1 in a billion people are trans, And now it's like, oh yeah. Well, also the part of the country I live in, I feel like we're in Trans Central here in Somerville, but there's a lot of people who are trans. And it is an important thing to get out, because I never even just thought about it, And, there's a lot of profound moments. And in this, there's only a handful of really big jokes that made me laugh. And it's more of that, it's more of an education than a stand-up bit. But that education is so important, in my opinion. No empathy is bisexual, is something he says at one point. And, I knew your father. He was a wonderful woman is a great joke. Yeah. Yeah, so I wasn't really on board at first, but I think that he explains himself very well about what his intentions were with those jokes and the injustice he feels about the, black movement. Whereas, I don't, you get what I'm saying? I'm kind of stepping on my own words as usual, but because I don't want to say the wrong thing, because you don't want to say the wrong thing. Although Dave Chappelle's not really worried about it because he has the conviction behind the stuff that he's saying. He's really thought it out and he knows. And sometimes it feels a little bit like him being like, "Look at how awesome I am." But the last line is really profound and amazing, and it made me think for like a while, which doesn't, usually you get like a nice good punchline at the end, and sometimes it's a callback or whatever. This is like, oh shit, yeah, that is a really good point. That is a really good point. And I won't spoil it or anything. The very last shot, though, is a picture of him and Norm. It says "For Norm." And I was like, oh, shit, that was really powerful to see that at the very end for whatever reason, But, it all goes back to the idea, which I know that there's some fallacy in this statement, but it wraps it up pretty well. It's easier for, Jenner to change her gender than for Muhammad Ali to change his name. Now, I know that there's like 60 years in between those two events or whatever, or like 50 years, but you get what he's trying to say, Anyway, I thought it was powerful and amazing, and I still think he's the GOAT. And I want him to take a few years off, and then I want him to come back, and I want him to not have to do this. I want him to not have to lecture us. I want him to just go back making jokes. Hopefully society will be clean enough in a few years. Probably not, huh? For him to just tell. But he's such a good storyteller. It doesn't matter. I'd watch him talk about anything, really. But yeah, I recommend it. I don't think it's the best one of those 5. I think the one where he talks about OJ is probably the best one of those 5. I forget what it's called, Deep in the Heart of Texas or something like that. But it's some good stuff. I would check it out. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of music. Is this going to do something? I am having a human experience. All right. Talk to you tomorrow. Peace out. Oops.